No, they said that about people in Indiana. Now I've learned something about Indianapolis I didn't know, so that's great. Thank you for joining us. And I think one of the things that I think is really important about this is that the way we interact in social media is shaping all of our offline behaviors. So we may not, although we can talk about that, those of us sitting here today may not be using lots of social media. We may be. But even so, if we go to the next slide, even if we don't interact with social media, whether you participate or not, what's shared online has offline consequences. And so understanding it is really, really important. So actually, before we get started, so I'm just going to say, and then if people want to just unmute themselves and say, so I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and probably something else. And I very infrequently tweet, but I do post quite a bit on those other media. How about you guys? Go ahead, Marcia.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. I signed up for Twitter because at some point there was something specific that I wanted to see that supposedly was on Twitter. And so I would say that I'm minimally, I check it every once in a while, but I'm not really interested in it. I'm trying to think if there's something besides Facebook.
Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok.
You know, I honestly don't even know what those things are,
Okay.
which is
That's fine. I just thought, what about you, Judy? You've got your mic off.
Yeah, I'm Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, MeWe, Workplace, Snapchat. I do some of those because my grandkids do, and it's a way of keeping track of family and so forth. But most of my Twitter retweets are just that. I don't really start anything, and I rarely make comments. But I do have a friend that comments all the time, and I have to tell you, she sounds silly. Some of the things that she writes on there, I thought, does she realize how she comes across? I mean, she's my age, and she says things that I think, oh my gosh, does she understand how she sounds? But yeah, and the other ones, I've never posted anything on Snapchat or Instagram, but I do see my grandkids' pictures that they post.
What about you, Lenny?
I do Facebook, and like Marcia, I had at one point in time had a Twitter account, but I found it really annoying. I kept turning off notifications and things, and so I closed that account. But yeah, I try to limit. My grands are all doing Snapchats or Instagram, and I keep thinking I ought to do that, but a lot of them will double post to Facebook too, so then I still get to see the pictures.
Right. Anne, you can say or not.
It's pretty minimal. I did Facebook to begin with to get pictures of grandkids, but then they quit posting very much, and so mostly I just scroll through and get a whole lot of recipes. I can say
that's good.
I do too.
Not that I use. I mean, they're just there. I mean, and
right. And so I think, and I saw Deborah posted in the chat. So I think one of the things that I do a lot of, I've done a lot in Facebook because I've formed community on Facebook, and I do a lot of league stuff on Facebook. So that's where I do primarily that. But I also post pictures and do other things. But one of the things that I think a lot of people don't realize is, and this is very true when we start talking about media companies, is that we get these platforms for free because our attention is how they get paid for. You get paid for by your clicks, and I think that that's one of those important points that I think we don't remember. And so in the program that I've talked about several times called Calling Bullshit, in their episode 9 of their series that you can watch online, they say, why do people share things on the internet? And it's actually called social signaling. And we're all publishers, and many times we share information as a signal of our group membership. So I will repost things from the League of Women Voters. I'll repost, things that I'm interested in. And click-driven publishing models are facilitating the spread of fake news, and that's why it's important. So, and we also have the opportunity to tweet whatever we want. There isn't a lot of controls over it. So I think that's one of the points. And the link to that, as with all the links that I've talked about in this series, are on the Kittitas League website. We've been updating the links and we'll continue to update the links. So once you get to our website, if you go to resources, navigating digital information is right there. All of the episodes are there. All of the links are there. All the slides, the links to the playlist. So if you want to develop resources for other groups you're part of, please feel free to do that. And if you are successful, you might let us know that it worked. So what we're going to talk about a little bit is the good stuff on the internet, why we want to do that. And I think we've talked about it already. We share information. I think one of the things that's really important, especially from a league perspective, is that it has sort of equalized the situation. So people whose voices were not able to make it into the mainstream media in the past now can. So I follow many people on social media, especially Twitter and Instagram, who I think in the past would not be covered and who are not necessarily the people that you see on the television either. And I think that's one of the really good points. And we can make friends and do community. Go ahead, Anne, sorry.
No, I just wanted to share that was actually part of a newscast on NPR this morning. I can't remember who was being interviewed, but talking about Navalny's situation in Russia and the fact that he maybe can be more than a footnote because social media is there to help get his cause out. But, the jury's still out as to, what can happen depending on how quickly he succumbs to death in terms of his current actions. So I thought that was interesting.
That is interesting. And then sorry.
No, just that can help give voice to what he's doing and mobilize more people beyond him.
And I'm not so sure that the trial that we just have lived through would have had the same result if social media and cell phones had not been available either. So let's talk a little bit about the terrible stuff. Cyberbullying, scams and spam, catfishing, disinformation. These are all pretty terrible. And
what's catfishing?
I believe catfishing means, and Charlie can say, go ahead, Charlie. I just saw you unmuted.
Catfishing is pretending to be somebody else, usually in romantic online things. So often men are pretending to be women are pretending to be men, or they're pretending to be 18 when they're 58 or whatever. Those are catfishing.
Thank you.
And so I think one of the quotes that came out of the podcast or the YouTube video was, when in doubt about anything you encounter online, you can challenge your source and your assumptions and see what other people say.